Richard. How's it going?
Good. Happy almost 4th of July.
Yep. Declaration of Independence and all that.
It's good stuff.
Well, anyway, it's good to see you, man.
Same
Your
here.
record is really quite heartful and
Thank you.
very amazingly arranged, but all your stuff is.
Thanks.
I mean, I would, instead of a garage rocker, I would actually put you, if we're classifying, more in the sunshine pop, that element, association, left bank, maybe.
Sure, I'll take that.
Oh, yeah.
It's good company.
It's very beautiful. My favorite song on the new record is Cedar Brook Park.
That's about Plainfield.
Really love that.
Yeah, that's just one of the rare, pure autobiographical songs I've written.
Well, it's good. I also like the tone of your voice. I can hear that you listen to cantors as a user, and it kind of comes into there as well. How do you do these records? I mean, do you obviously maybe you go to a studio to put the drums on and then you bring them home and pile on the overdubs?
Yeah, the old layer cake method, one thing at a time. When I play with my band, the Doughboys, which is a real pure garage rock band, we do everything live in the studio, the old school way. But for my solo career, I just decided to do the layer cake method from kind of early McCartney. And lately, my wife has been playing a lot of bass, so it's really kind of a team effort.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Do you do it in your home, or do you have an outside studio where you do stuff like this?
The drums I do at a place called East Side Sound here in Manhattan, the Lower East Side. And then, and what I do is I just set the kit up in the middle of the big room. They mic it all up, and I just play for like 10 hours straight, just all these songs that are in my head, just drums. And then I take that home and we have Logic Pro, which is kind of like Pro Tools, but it's, I guess, the Apple version of Pro Tools. And I usually just start with like a rhythm instrument, and I go right to the vocals. I get all my vocals done up front.
Wow.
And then, which is a little backwards from the norm. And then I kind of just listen to see what the track should be behind the vocals. And I start one by one.
I mean, you're very prolific, I have to say. How many albums have you done as a solo
This is my 14th album.
Amazing. Good for you.
Yeah, it's so funny, that word prolific. The first time I ever saw that word, I'll bet you it was with you too, it was on the back of that Who album. There was maybe, I think, the first or second Who album, and it said something about Pete Townsend being prolific, and I had to look it up in the dictionary.
Oh, amazing. Well, you seem, do you play this stuff out? I mean, I haven't. I mean, obviously, in the last couple of years, we haven't been able to get out.
Right.
But do you take it out with a band, or how do you?
I have, yeah. I play mostly in the city. Don't do much touring, but I, just play the clubs in New York or whoever will have me. And then, lately we've been doing a few things via the internet where we can perform from home, especially in the pandemic. We did a song from our bed, the two of us.
John and Yoko.
Yes, a bed in. So we, have been experimenting with ways to present it in that fashion. But mainly, I'm more into the recordings and getting those right.
Oh, that's fantastic. We share New Jersey roots at a very specific moment in time. I would say that our arc was pretty similar. I mean, your band actually recorded original stuff for a regular label, and of course you got to meet Clay Cole, which is kind of amazing. But we grew up at a time when, even though it's kind of hazed by nostalgia and romanticism, being in a band was really kind of street level. I mean, I remember, mostly my band played fraternity houses at Rutgers, or, you know,
Yeah.
DFW halls, or, you know, weird gymnasiums
Did you,
someplace.
did you know, you must have known the Looking Glass. They were,
Very, very well. We were actually rival bands
I'll
at
bet.
Rutgers. And there was another band, actually, I just got an email from him because of my Sirius show, a guy who was in the Ruins. It was, you know, the third of the Rutgers bands. But yeah, I was very friendly with Elliot and Pete Sweevil, Jeff, the drummer. I mean, you know, we all were on the totally the same circuit. It was very ironic.
well, I was kind of around then too. I jammed with them, with the
Oh, yeah.
lead singer and guitar player. Yeah, did some jamming in the afternoon somewhere around New Brunswick.
Catherine Street, maybe, where they lived. I think there was a song on their first album called
Yeah,
Catherine Street.
but
Yeah, Elliot was really, you know, they were good people. And I have to say, when they got, you know, had that moment in time where they became a number one
Brandy, yeah.
song in the nation, Brandy, yeah. And you know, it was exciting for them. You know, I know that there was a lot of different musical things within the band. Pete Sweevil went into that group Stars with a Z with Richie
Oh yeah,
Reno.
yeah.
And you know, Jeff played around quite a bit, but you know, I jammed out with all those guys, you know, back in 60s New Brunswick, which was,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, you know, I went to Rutgers in '69.
Oh, so
Yes, I was there. And I mean, the main thing I learned when I was there was ping pong. I mean, I used to just hang out at the student center and play ping pong all day long. So I ended up just leaving because I realized it just wasn't for me. I wanted to get out and start playing rock and roll. So I was there for a while, but just, you know, went down to that student center, which they had that great room with the records. Remember, you could sit in a room and put albums on, and people would just sit in there and listen to an album. It was like a listening room.
Well, that was the student center on College Avenue, because when I was there, the only student center was the Ledge, which was over by the river.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the street was, but it was the main one, and downstairs was all ping pong tables. Remember, there was a piano.
I think that would have been the newer one,
Oh, okay.
because I graduated 67.
Oh, so
I was a year ahead of myself because I skipped when I lived in Brooklyn, the 8th grade. But yeah, so I was gone by end of 67, even though I still hung out at the campus, and you know, because I lived in New Brunswick. But
did you go into the village a lot?
Yes, by then, but not as much as I would. I mean, I was definitely arrowed toward moving to New York as soon as I could. And I actually went from Rutgers to NYU, where I got my master's degree in American history. And then, of course, I returned to what it is I do now, which is I'm actually weirdly well trained from college, because I studied American history, and I feel I'm a cultural historian, rock and roll. And I had, you know, I minored in having a band there. So I learned what it was. I actually, you know, got an education in who I would be.
That's great.
But,
yeah, I'm a Civil War buff. I grew up, you know, it was the centennial when I was like around 12, I guess, 10 or 12. And I built a big diorama of the Battle of Chattanooga, and I was really into it and read every book I could. And still to this, I actually have a song called Civil War Buff.
Oh, wow, that's really cool. Well, certainly one of the, in terms of this nation, one of the central things of our history that we still are dealing with. I mean, it's really remarkable. My daughter lives down in Oxford, Mississippi. And when I go there, I also remember that song, you know, Phil Oakes used to sing, you know, here's to the state of Mississippi.
Yeah.
Find yourself another country to be part of.
Yeah, I love it.
And it's really great. What was it like being in a band in Jersey? I mean, was it, you know, I mean, everybody wanted to be in a band in a certain way, but you got to do it. I got to do it. How did it empower you?
Well, I recall that starting around 64, when after the Beatles, of course, and everybody got the bug, no pun intended, to be in a band, there was just a select group of people that knew how to play instruments. So it was a small clique of people that could actually pull it off. And then it seemed very shortly after that, everybody and their brother must have learned how to play guitar and drums, because there were so many bands. But right in the beginning, it was a select few that were doing it. And that's my main initial memory is, okay, I'm a musician. I've been playing drums since I was a kid. This is what I'm supposed to do. Love the Beatles, the Stones, and all this stuff is hitting you in every which way. So it just seemed a natural progression for me. And next thing I know, there's just so much competition. It's just like everybody's playing and you're trying to, audition for different dances, and you have to compete now to get a gig. And so, but it was just magical.
You started out on drums. Did the other instruments fall into place afterwards? I know you keyboards, obviously, and I can hear your keyboard playing all over your solo stuff. Guitar, I mean, did you kind of move up the ranks of the instruments?
Yeah, it was drums first, and then I started banging around on pianos, and it just seemed like an extension of the drums because I was banging. And I used to read, oh, this is part of the percussion family. I said, oh, okay, I'm a drummer, so I should learn the piano. So I started getting the basic chords. And then a few years later, I don't know if you know this guy, Alan LaBeouf. Do you know him? He used to be in Beatlemania. Anyway, when I was at Rutgers, actually, he taught me how to play a G chord and a C chord. And I couldn't believe how hard it was. It was just like so against my muscle memory as a drummer, and to try to just get from a G to a C was, I couldn't believe people actually could do it that fast. But then with practice, I started to get the folk chords like everybody started. And that worked up to bar chords, and you know how it is. And then you start to hear Keith Richards and you start learning those Chuck Berry riffs. And it's like this natural progression of rock guitar playing 101. But I remember somebody said, if you can play all the riffs that Keith Richards is doing on the first 4 Stones albums, you're good. That was a barometer. But then, of course, we're missing that period of like the Ventures and the instrumental rock, which was kind of, catching us by surprise, because we're all doing this surf rock instrumental stuff. And then the Beatles come. It's like, oh, we got to learn how to play and sing at the same time. So it was that changeover. So yeah,
it was a totally. I remember in New Brunswick there were a bunch of bands, but they were very instrumental oriented. There was a band called the Dual Sonics, and then there was the Renegades, but they were all pretty much instrumental. And then when the Beatles came on, that was like a whole new band model. I know for myself, I had started learning guitar maybe a year before. I wanted to be the lonely folk singer in the backyard. And then the Beatles came and I went electric. But it was an interesting thing. Were you friendly with any of the other New Jersey bands at the time, like the Middle Class? I know you mentioned them in your book from the Al Aronowitz connection.
Yeah.
But
I was. I knew the Middle Class and the Critters, who had a couple hits with Mr. Dingley Sad and Younger Girl. Don Ciccone, the lead singer, was from Plainfield, went to my high school.
Wow.
So I knew him. And the Middle Class were right in the area. And the organ player, Danny Mansolino, lived in North Plainfield. So I used to go over to rehearsals and watch them, and was in awe, because they were a few years older and were so great. And they had the wonderful Dave Palmer on vocals, who went on to sing with Steely Dan. And he was just one of these guys that as soon as you heard his voice, there was no question, this guy's a great singer. So that was exciting to know them and the Critters, and seeing those bands, because they were a few notches ahead of us as far as really knowing how to pull it off. And they influenced us for sure. But you know, my band was all garage rock. I mean, we were just
Right.
total Stones, Animals, Kinks. Whereas inside, I was a Beatlemaniac, along with all that. But I couldn't express that because I was just a drummer. I wasn't singing yet. But I was happy to do Down Home Girl and all the Stone songs. And that was great.
There was definitely a lot of progressions in there. I think my band started, playing the Vandals, started playing What Did I Say and Shout, for the fraternity party. Brothers could swim in beer on the floor. And then as it came, along, we would move into kind of the soul music of the time, Sam and Dave, or Expressway to Your Heart,
Knock on wood.
Yeah, I'm totally knock on wood. And then, of course, when the hippie thing came on, we started, sitting on the floor and playing My Generation like a raga, or of course Gloria. But it was a great learning time. You guys actually did get out of New Jersey though and play. We're kind of you had a shot, as they say, with the Doughboys. How did that feel?
Well, we were a little too young is the problem. Nobody was writing songs yet. We got a record deal with Bell Records from a Battle of the Bands show. We did this thing called Zachary Disco Team, which was
Zachary. And there's a great human who needs to be remembered.
Yes. Well, he had this TV show, and it was kind of based on American Bandstand, dancing, playing the hits, and he would do his Zachary Gould thing. And it was great. And we were on there and we won a Battle of the Bands in like 66. And first prize was a record deal with Bell Records. So we're in the studio and we were just given songs because nobody was writing yet. I was 13 or 14. And the first song we were given was called Rhoda Mendelbaum. And that was our single. And it didn't make it onto Nuggets, but it was just... this corny song written by professional writers that we garaged up a little bit, and it went nowhere. But it did get played on WMCA because they had a deal that if we would do their Good Guy shows, which were promotional shows on the weekends, they would play our records. So we made this deal with them, and we played every weekend for months and months with everybody that was in the top 40, except for the superstars. We saw the first performances of Neil Diamond, and when he was just doing acoustic, and Syndicate of Sound, and all of the girl groups that were popular then. So that was a real experience. And then our second single was Everybody Knows My Name, which was written by Bob Gaudio from the Four Seasons.
Wow.
And the same thing, didn't really chart, but we did more WMCA Good Guy shows, got to meet all these bands that were doing better than we were. And it was a learning experience. They were these big package shows that you do like 3 songs.
Kind of amazing, incredible experience.
Yeah, we got a few big opening slot. We opened for the Beach Boys at a big concert when Good Vibrations was a hit. So that
amazing.
Was certainly a fun experience.
And then you wound up in the Quinn Ames band, which I know because I was kind of associated with Elektra in those days, starting to put together what would be Nuggets and etc. So I always think that part of Elektra is overlooked because they had some really, you think of them as this kind of art rock label, but they had Krabby Appleton.
I know that album, sure.
Yeah, I mean, they had some really good pop stuff. How was it being in Quinn Ames?
That was a weird experience. The Quinn Ames band was essentially the middle class with a couple other new members. But it was the middle class after years and years of struggling to get an album out because they had put out singles through Carole King. Goffin and King were working with them, and Al Aronowitz was managing them. And I think it was Dimension or some kind of label they have.
Dimension record,
So yeah, they put out
Tomorrow Records. Dimension was the Carole King's other
Free as
label.
the Wind, and
Tomorrow, Free as the Wind. Great song.
yeah, they did a great cover of some Dylan, Great Gates of Eden. Yeah, it's a middle class. They were fantastic. So they finally kind of change over into the Quinn Ames Band, get this album deal, make an album, and literally the day that it was released, they broke up. And not one of them wanted to have anything to do with the record or touring or anything. And so
why did they break up?
I guess, same reason that all bands break up. Just pick one. I don't know, but
Band shit, I believe, is what the producer Jim Dickinson once said. Band shit.
So I get a call. Quinn Ames Band is no more. They're already booked to open for Sly and the Family Stone.
Wow.
For a promotional tour. And there's no one who wants to be involved, not one of them. Would you play drums in this new Quinn Ames Band? So I said, oh, sure, okay. So I say, okay, and literally 2 days after that phone call, we're at Madison Square Garden, opening for Sly and the Family Stone, packed house. Frankie Crocker's introducing us, and I'm scared shitless. I mean, we had one quick rehearsal because this wasn't, a put together unit that was ready to go. So we'd have one rehearsal. I think we learned maybe 2 songs, maybe even one from the Quinn Ames album. The rest was just like R&B covers. And here we are touring with Sly and the Family Stone. What more can you say?
Amazing. Well, I think in your book you mentioned that when you did your drum solo, you got a standing ovation.
That's what my parents told me. Because you must know from certain venues you just see black. It's like blackness out there. You can see maybe the first row or two, and then it's black. And I was so scared that I stopped looking. And I did this like psychological trick to keep my wits about me, which was I looked at this Indian rug that was on the floor and just pretended that was the whole venue. That was a small club the size of that rug. It's like a little raft, safety raft. And that got me sort of relaxed and I could get through it.
I always feel that too. I mean, I know when I'm on the road with Patti and we're playing some of these gigantic festivals, and if you look out, you see, 20,000, 40,000, 50,000 people. And if you think about that, it's daunting, but I just really can only see the first 5 rows, and usually they're your people. And, you just figure, well, what the heck? Instead of trying to make yourself too large so you reach everybody, just play to them and figure that
right. I mean, the difference is that those people were there to see you and Patti. These people were there to see Sly and the Family Stone. They didn't know who the hell we were. And even if it was the real Quinn Ames Band, they wouldn't have known who they were. They just put that record out. So it was scary, but we got through it and we made some new fans.
Well, that's nice. That's a fun experience.
Memory,
yeah. And so then, pretty much for the remainder of the 20th century, you just kind of got into a solo mood.
Yeah, well, it was a combination. I was playing with Link Ray, legendary guitar player from the 50s. He had that hit Rumble, and got that gig when I moved down to Washington, D.C. And I did that. I started doing some work as a drummer for other people.
Was that when Chris Spedding was in his band, or Robert Gore?
No, he was simultaneously doing shows with Robert Gore, but he was also doing his own shows. So I was playing those. And
what kind of a guy was Link?
Link was a real sweetheart. He really was. He was very, very kind to me. Really, when I told him I was starting to write some songs, he was really curious to hear what I had and was open to recording some of them. I left the band before that happened, but I was very impressed with the fact that he was such a caring person, and was a fan of my drumming as we were together. I mean, he would compliment me all the time, and right back at you, because I mean, his guitar playing was blowing my mind. I mean,
Yeah.
it was such a joy to play with him. You know, it was the next best, or I shouldn't even say next best, but it was like playing with the Who. You know, it was that kind of energy.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what he wanted. He wanted pure Keith Moon, abandoned,
Wow, great.
frenetic energy. So that's what I gave him, and he was very happy with that. And in turn, he was playing these great sounding power chords. I've never heard anybody else with this particular sound that he had, which was kind of like clean and dirty at the same time. And I remember noticing that, like you could hear the glisten of each string as he went across, but it was still grungy at the same time. And I thought, how's he doing that? And I just remember taking notes, an SG through a big Ampex amp. I'm pretty sure it had 412s in it, and he got this amazing sound. So anyway, yeah, so I was doing that kind of work, and I started to write more. Like back in those days, it was just impossible to get going. I mean, to get a record deal, you had to win over an A&R person with your demo.
Right.
And there's this vicious circle, catch-22, of you needed money to make the demo. People don't realize how expensive it was just to get into a, halfway decent studio. So eventually I realized I got to just find a really cheap, affordable place to do some demos or whatever. And through the Village Voice, I found a guy who had a Tascam, like everybody had, the 4-track. And that's how I started recording. And at a certain point, after getting rejected with the demos, I said to my wife, and we both agreed, what is the difference between these demos and a record? And we just said, all right, if everything's in tune and in time, basically, that's good enough for us. That's a record. Let's just put it out ourselves. So that's what we did. We put it out ourselves. And next thing I know, Rolling Stone reviewed it. And that opened the floodgates, because of that one review, I got signed to a major label and put out an album. I had 2 major label deals, both of them first I got signed to Cypress A&M, and they put out that first album, which was called Living Room, because it was recorded in a living room. And then Seymour Stein from Sire heard one of the songs on the radio in New York, called me up at home, offered me a deal on the spot based on the song he heard. I told him I'm already on this label. He says, all right, we'll come into the office, we'll work it out. So they bought out my contract, and I was on Sire, Warner Brothers.
Right.
My second album called Heyman, my last name. And then, like a lot of people, I fell through the cracks and was out in the independent world. And so I started my own label and been doing the whole independent thing. My wife runs the show. And
well, that's, in the end, and now this is really how you have to do it. I mean,
yeah, it's funny. It's come full circle.
Kind of revenge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I don't know how anybody could get an actual deal these days. I guess some people still do, but you got to be up in that kind of Taylor Swift stratosphere or something to make a dent, it seems.
Well, it's pretty amazing. But the fact that you've been able to keep on keeping on, I mean, I'm all about the work you do today as opposed to the lineage that you have in back of you. I know that's always been the thing to keep me honest, to keep me sparky, and to understand that really it's how you keep engaged and motivated in your own art and your own life. And I have to tell you, Richard, you've really you've kept that going.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
I mean, in the end, it's your body and soul of work that you mount up each day. And I was really happy to see your new record and to give it a good listen, and to see that really you just keep getting better.
Oh, thank you.
No, it's really the record is really interesting. I mean, it's so ornate. When I touchstone the association or the left bank or something, it's because it is there. And, I mean, a lot of garage rockers do a kind of music which has been done many a time. I'm all for people waving the flag and, turning up the fuzz tone and the farfisa. But, to me, that was kind of then. I want to see the inspiration that you get from that music, but become something else.
Right.
Can you trace a line from who you were back in '65 to now, and see and tell me what the things that are uppermost when you make music, what has remained constant within your artistic life?
Well, for me, it started with the way music made me feel as a listener. I was so moved by certain songs as a kid. And when I would hear the Everly Brothers, I would just get a chill from the sound they were making. And then I have 3 older sisters, so I would hear all the records that were lying around the house, and I'd start to hear Chuck Berry and Elvis and all that burgeoning rock and roll. And that was, a real eye opener. And then, of course, the British invasion hits. But it's all about emotion for me. I'm a very kind of charged person with my feelings. And when I heard She Loves You, I just felt this joyfulness, this combination of emotion. That's what music is for me. And then there's the playing of music. But a lot of people don't realize the difference, because playing music and listening are 2 different things. And, as a player, you have to realize, okay, how is this going to end up for the listener? And so I kind of try to give a listenability test to everything I do before I put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so
what is that test? Do you play it for somebody?
For Nancy and myself, I used to demo. I don't demo so much anymore, but I used to demo, and there'd be just tons of stuff to listen to. And these songs that you thought were your new masterpiece, you'd listen back and say, "This is crap. This is not doing anything for me." You thought it was the best thing you ever did. And you got to be honest with yourself when you listen. And so maybe some song, which was nothing, it becomes a sleeper. It was like, wow, that's the one. That's got something I didn't realize. So that's all from listening. And I think John Lennon even mentioned that once about you don't know what you have until you listen to it. And it's really true. So we do that. We listen. And if it's moving us, you got to go with this kind of process of, okay, there's the recording of it, the listener's going to hear it, they're human like us, somebody out there is going to be like us, and they're going to feel the same way. But truthfully, I mean, my main motivation is, like I said in the beginning, just the way it makes me feel, and I hope people like it, but I have no control over that. We all do the best we can with each song. And I've never, ever, though, sat down and said, I'm going to write a kind of Beatlesque song, or I'm going to write a Stonesy song. I just, whatever, you're lucky, anything comes. So, I mean, I don't question it, and I don't try to emulate any.
You started on guitar or keyboards, or, hear it in your head or whatever?
All those things. I mean, some of the best songs I've written were just walking down the street. I start singing to myself all of a sudden. I said, wow, what is that? And it's an original idea. And then there's this rush to get it on tape because, it's so easy to lose it. If you walk into a store and they're playing other music, it's going to evaporate. But some of those made it. And I got home and I realized, okay, I got this melody. And then you're kind of surprised what the chords actually are behind it. Sometimes they're very simple, and those are interesting because when you're dabbling, when you're on the piano, and a little less because I'm not as good a guitar player as I am on the keyboard, but you're kind of experimenting with chords. So maybe you'll get a little fanciful with your chords, and then a melody will come on top of that. The songs that you hear in your head when you're in bed or walking down the street are melodies. You have no idea what the chords are going to be until you sit down. So those are
I
interesting.
really love that story that I read in your book about how the Doughboys reunion came about when Nancy got your old band, got the band back together.
Yes, that was, she decided after years of hearing about this band, she wanted to hear for herself. So she called all the members, the original members, and told them to be at a rock club in Manhattan on such and such a date. And then I would show up unaware. And this was for a birthday present.
Right.
And that's how it got started again. We, we're together throughout most of the last half of the 60s. Then we broke up, didn't see each other for decades. And then in, what was it, 2000? In the year 2000.
How was it coming back full circle? Was there any band shit from that?
It's funny. Nothing goes away. All those old conflicts and personalities, they're all still there. But all the good stuff is there still. And it's the old riding a bike thing. We start to play. We're doing Route 66. And it's literally like a time machine. And we were just like, okay, it's 1965, now it's 2000, but we're still playing those same parts. And luckily, everybody had the wherewithal to put the energy into it. And if anything, I thought the reunited Doughboys was even better than the original lineup.
You bring the experience you've learned over 30, 40 years or whatever. I believe that we do learn something. We may hear music in the same way, but it's also, we know how to do it, and we know how to do it. We're not just grasping at the wind. And I listened to solos I did 40 years ago, and I can see that I have the same sense of melody in my head, but I know this time I'm going to be able to interpret it and, bend that string just a millimeter into the right thing. And, it's one of the great things about being a musician, unlike, say, a sports person, which starts I do believe we all keep getting better. And hey, good for you. You keep getting better.
Appreciate that.
This has been really fun, man. I really it was great to have a chat with you. Born under the same sky, as they say.
Yeah, no, it's nice. And all kudos to you, all the great music you've put out there. I really am a big fan, and I appreciate it.
Wow, thank you.
Get together.
We're just doing our work. We're just doing our work, really. I'm so grateful. I always joke that if I would have thought I would be doing this half century later, I would have learned to read music. And with Nuggets, I always think if I really knew what I was doing, and would realize that this album would be talked about next year will be 50 years.
Oh my God.
I would have certainly fucked it up. I was just like, okay, I like these songs. They all seem to have the same idea, but we contain multitudes. Anyway, it's really great to have a chat with you. Hey, we did it. We got it together. Have a good one. And hey, lots of luck with the now and the future.
Thank you.
Same to you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Good health. Bye-bye.